Hello and welcome to Listen and Be Heard, a show for writers and readers, speakers and listeners. My name is Martha Senator, and we're creating community culture. Today we'll be talking to and listening to writers of written and spoken poetry. Tony Robles has contributed 2 interviews for today. The first one that we will hear is with Vanessa Lee Miller, a poet, playwright, and Hawaiian language activist living abroad. And of course, we'll hear some of her poetry as well. Later in the program, we will hear a conversation between Tony Robles and Yvette Murray in Charleston, South Carolina, author of Hush, Puppy. And along the way, some old and some new spoken word, and even a little bit of storytelling about a bear at the very end. So please, stay tuned.
Giving it, having it, taking it, moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is sewing a coat, investing each.
Listen and Be Heard originates from WPVM Radio 103.7 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, and WPVMFM.org worldwide, a community, non-commercial radio station.
Living it is knowing you will do it. It's speaking the unspoken. It's thinking the unthinkable. It's doing the unexpected. It's quitting before you get fired.
Thank you, Martha. And this is Tony Robles. Welcome to Listen and Be Heard Radio. You know, the last few shows we've aired on WPVM, we focused on poetry being the voice of culture, the voice of people, the voice of the landscape, wherever one happens to be. Poets tell the story of people. And, you know, my mother used to tell me that if you want to know the history of a society at a particular time, read their poets. And today we have a poet who I've been wanting to talk to for quite some time. Vanessa Lee Miller is a poet, a playwright, and a freelance journalist. And she was born and raised in Hilo, Hawaii, where she still keeps one luau foot firmly planted on her Ohana's kuleana, and the other luau foot often travels to perform at literary events where the public's curiosity to hear Hawaiian language in verse or drama has taken her to venues covering working class pubs, to the British Library and Pembroke College in Oxford. She's often identified as a Hawaiian language activist. She describes her decades-long struggle to keep Olelo Hawaii alive, and I hope I'm saying Olelo correctly, as an essential part of preserving Hawaiian culture. The Olelo is a place where the soul thrives. That is, language being where the soul thrives. And welcome, Vanessa Lee Miller, to our program.
Thank you. Mahalo, Tony. Lovely to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been wanting to speak with you for quite some time. Now, you are currently in the UK, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And
yes.
I guess part of the reason you're there, I guess your husband works there, but some of your cultural work happens over there. Maybe if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I arrived roughly 20 years ago in the UK. And my husband spent a lot of time at work. And I was kind of on my own to fend for myself. It's a huge heaving metropolis full of culture, full of people, lots of things to do, plenty of things to keep you busy all day and all night. But I needed to find that niche. I needed to find out how do I connect with this place? Where do I go to be with people that I find I have something in common with, And it took me to a group of Maori people from New Zealand, and they had a culture group operating out of their consulate. And they were very, very active in promoting their culture through dance, through language, and they're big on performing their dance. And so I connected with them, and they then wove me into their community and kept me in touch with Pacific peoples in London, people from Oceania, and events where whenever there's, for example, an exhibition in a museum about peoples or Pacific cultures, they got me involved. And that's how I started to get involved and reach out to London society and represent Hawaii as much as I could through performing arts and talking to people about the culture.
It's wonderful when you're able to find somebody or find a community in that way. I know with Hawaii, my uncle very much was involved and really loved the islands and would always talk about this thing called talk story, right? It was a whole cultural thing. As a matter of fact, being here in Hendersonville, North Carolina, I actually met a guy from Hawaii a few days ago. He was standing in line at the market. And for some reason, I thought, that guy's probably from Hawaii. So I got into a conversation with him. We're probably going to connect. We also have Micronesians that are living, a big Micronesian community living here in Hendersonville. Been out and connected with them, and it's a really good feeling. I first became aware of your work in Kipuka, which was a journal that came out, I guess, in 2022, published by Bamboo Ridge Press. I was very much moved by your poem that was featured in there. We're going to actually ask you later on in the program to read from that poem if you do have that available. But in reading your bio, Vanessa, it says that the struggle to keep Olelo Hawaii alive is essential to preserving culture. It's where the soul thrives. Tell us, what is Olelo Hawaii and why that is important?
Well, Olelo Hawaii is the language of Hawaii, and it's the voice. It's what ties people together, and some people speak it fluently. The language almost died, I'd say around the middle of the 20th century, as the elderly people who spoke it in their communities fluently with each other, as they died off and weren't able to encourage the younger generations to speak it. It kind of disappeared and then was revived in the 70s. And that was called the Hawaiian Renaissance, where there was a reawakening of the need to preserve the culture, whether it's through language, through music, through dance, through performance, through weaving, through canoe voyaging, and storytelling, talk story, There's so many aspects, but the root of it is the language. And however you speak it, there's so many different levels. As I say, you might just say a few words, but you connect, like you connected with a guy from Hawaii. There's something about it. And you said you talk story, and even that, that brings you again to voice. And I do believe that the soul of any culture is in the language. And translations are great, but it can only take you so far in really understanding the core meaning. And
in Olelo Hawaii, the word, and I've learned this from you actually, the word for fresh water is wai. Is that correct? W-A-I?
Correct.
Am I saying that correctly? Wai,
yes.
W-A-I. Can you talk about the importance of water? Because that was so prominent in the poem, your poem called Wailuku. Can you talk about the importance of water to the culture of Hawaii and its people and how it influences your work as a writer and an activist, and how, it plays out, because it does play out in the struggle for, or the struggle for some people in Hawaii to try to maintain power politically or otherwise.
Why is the source of life. And without fresh water, we die. We need why to grow our plants and our food sources. For drinking, we need why for cleaning. You just can't think of how many times a day you go to your water source, the tap in the kitchen or the bath, whatever it is. We take it for granted, and it's like gold in Hawaii and many, many cultures that live so close to their land and are so dependent on what Hawaii brings to you and how much it gives you and its abundance. And Hawaii did become it is a commodity all around the world. It's a global issue. It's a global value. And as a commodity, it means that people struggle to own it, to make it theirs, to control it. And a large crop like sugarcane, which came to Hawaii and became a huge cash crop and took over huge swathes of land since the late 19th century on. That land took over, and they diverted water sources, and it took away just the water sources that Hawaiians needed to grow their Hawaiian crops, their indigenous crops. And that's where politics and colonialism and occupation come into the story and come into my writing. Why can also be very destructive, as we all know, around the world. It's life-giving and it's also life-taking. So it's a powerful source that we just have to have a lot of respect for and revere it, I guess, as much as we're dependent on it.
Your poem really does speak to that and articulate the power of water and the voice of water as well. There's a part of me that knows that, with water is life, but water has been abused. It's been poisoned. It's been desecrated in many ways. You had mentioned the diversion of water with regards to sugarcane and I guess the industry that's connected with that, which, it's timely because of what has happened in Lahaina in Maui. One of the former state representatives, a young man by the name of Kaniela Ing, who is I guess he's the head of the Green New Deal Network. He described what happened in Maui as not a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Can you give us perhaps more of your perspective on that? Because he described the industries that have polluted the planet as being extractive, but also, you can say that these are extractive, but they absorb whatever it is that they come in contact with. They absorb it and create it in their own image, causing destruction of the natural habitat and the indigenous people. Can you give your feelings about that?
Well, I think I have a lot of respect for Kaniela, and I have heard him speak on other aspects and other issues which are really hard-hitting in Hawaii. But on the extractive issue, as we were talking about why and the value and the fact that why is a commodity, and why gets shaped, it gets taken away from its natural flow. It gets taken out of its natural context. And you can do it, you can be successful, and it can go on for decades. And then things happen beyond our control, or maybe not beyond our control. It's just that we all come to this predicament, and we're all here, and we don't know why we're here, and we need to take care of the problem right away, fix it right away, put a big Band-Aid on it and make it better again, so that we can carry on in that same lifestyle, that extractive lifestyle. And without really going back to where did it really come from? Where did this problem come from? And I don't know if it's answering your question, but I think we've gone so far astray from nature and nature's power, because nature strikes back. And I think this is nature hitting us back, regardless of whether we had a part in it or not. And this is what makes us all very vulnerable.
No, I mean, I think that's very, very well put. Another thing that you had touched on, or I guess the deep structure cultural way of life, that is Kuleana. Am I pronouncing that right? Kuleana.
Kuleana, yeah.
And I was thinking about that because as being a Filipino American, we also have something that's very similar called kapwa, 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 which is a responsibility for your neighbors, for other people, other human beings, not because you want to get something back, but because they are there. They are human beings, just like you. Can you talk about, which I thought was very interesting, because you sent me a lot of very deep and interesting material. Can you talk about tarot and what that means culturally to the Hawaiian people as it relates to Kuleana or Kuleana?
Yeah, Kuleana.
Kuleana.
Okay.
Because I think that's a very strong, in terms of like cohesiveness of community and intergenerational relationships. I thought that was a beautiful example.
Well, taro kalo is a crop. It's a canoe plant, and it was brought to the Hawaiian Islands by the first settlers, or one of the early stages of settlement. And it traveled well, it survived, and it grew well on the Hawaiian Aina, the land. And they learned how the relationship between taro and the land and all of the elements of nature, and how it supported the community. And Hawaiians have great respect for taro as a living being, actually. And that's how much respect they have, and how they, sometimes you put the modern material values aside and you think about the basics. And that's something that people might think, well, you could make so much money doing this. Why are you growing taro and working so hard all day? And sometimes the crop doesn't provide enough for what you've invested in, or, and that's the Kuleana, that inherent connection, the inherent responsibility, the inherent obligation to the past, the present, and the future. The more you value the Kuleana, the more people take care of you. It comes back to you in that way. And I think maybe you might even be relating to how we make poi, P-O-I, this ground, mashed taro, to the point where it becomes almost like not quite a thick gravy, but it's a mash, and it's finely mashed. And I wrote an essay on the value of sitting, the way families would sit with a huge communal bowl of poi at the table, and they'd share it, and they'd mix it with other foods. Some people say it's bland. Well, that's because you don't know how to combine it with other dishes to make it tasty. And the fact that we no longer sit around the table and share a bowl of poi and talk story, share concerns, maybe you're not even talking, but the family sees your reactions and whether you had a good day or not. They can see it without you saying it. All of that is gone. Everybody, not everybody, but it's common. Some people eat out. Some people sit at home and have their meal in front of the TV. That whole taking the poi bowl, I say, off the table has changed the family unit. It's going to be a difficult thing to bring back, I feel.
Yeah, in your essay, you do touch on that. I'll just read I'll read a paragraph from it. The loss of land and diversion of water sources needed to cultivate kalo, which is Kalo, a starch staple of the Hawaiian diet from which poi is made, further impeded independent farm cultivation and availability of this humble canoe plant in local markets. The role of Mahi'ai Kalo, the Kalo farmer, and his family unit as providers and role models for future generations progressively lost its meaning. Fry it in a pan, canned meats like Spam and Vienna sausage. I'm guilty on the Vienna sausage, accompanied by steamed rice, introduced by Asian immigrant laborers, began to work their way onto the native Hawaiian meal table. The communal poi bowl, an essential component in the traditional Polynesian diet, tragically began to vanish, along with time to fish and enjoy the sea and the entire family on the weekend. So intergenerational contact and the exchange of traditional knowledge and values began to decline. I appreciate you sending this to me because that was something that touched me. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff people don't know about Hawaii. I mean, they think of it as just this vacation place and, it's a playground and palm trees and all that stuff. What are some of what should people know? I mean, because there's so much stuff we don't know. I mean, the closest some people get is just like maybe a Hawaiian, like an aloha shirt and maybe a box of macadamia nuts. And that's it. I mean, what do you think people should know, if anything,
Well, I think, when tourism began to take off, probably starting in, I'd say the first half of the 20th century, maybe post-World War II is when, it really took off. And Hawaii was placed on the map through Pearl Harbor. That's when we started to experience travelers en masse coming. And I don't know whether I feel people should feel a certain way, but having respect for the land, trying to keep it clean if you're visiting beaches, parks, wild spaces where people go hiking. Those are the things I think that hurt. And I think local people can be guilty of that too. That's why I feel, in that respect, it's caring for the land and keeping it clean. Just like it's a loved one in a way. That would be my only thought. I don't know if we're going to be able to change mass tourism. Hawaii has become so dependent on it. I almost want to say that will be for future generations to work out how to weave. I mean, people get into ecotourism. I'm not sure it's the answer. Sometimes it's a fad and it goes away because that's quite expensive. It doesn't really accommodate mass tourism. But I don't know. I think it might be a kuleana for future generations. Caring for the land when you come to visit, anywhere in the world, taking care of all of those beautiful natural spots and leaving it as it was when you arrived.
Kae malie ka wai o
Wailuku. Wailuku, the raging Kahavai, the river. Her ka holo, her long, sinuous journey begins as a watery, pencil-thin line, a mere trickle, mauka, way up high, looking towards Na Lani on Mauna Kea. Her awana is a graceful journey iho, down slope, towards rainy Hilo. Hilo, ikaua kanilehua. As she continues to iho, journey down slope, a magical transformation ensues. From her embodiment of a graceful, delicate trickle, she widens, becoming voluptuous. She's now a raging beast, plunging turbulently downward, full of ena, capable of arbitrarily grasping in her watery fist a young, reckless life and smuggling it into one of her many deep, cavernous pockets in her slimy ana. She'll stash it there, it's hers, until the pale, lifeless form struggles through a multitude of tempestuous undercurrents to surface somewhere iho, down slope. But during the course of her journey, she leaves a trail of dazzling performances after week upon week of infinite drops of rain from Na Lani. Awestruck Malihini call these wonders Pi'ihonua Camp Cascades, boiling pots, rainbow falls. Old Hawaii calls them Poakana, Poakanini, Pe'epe'e, Waiā Nui Nui. She weaves ever so gracefully, skirting around sacred, smooth boulders, leaving her mossy footprints of slippery limu. She continues to awana in the wee hours of the morning. From my hamakua-facing bedroom window, I hear her raging, bellowing sounds, drowning out the lonely, searching calls of the small, scaly river creatures of the night. Searching in blind rage, she leaves no boulder, no jagged rock, no slimy pebble unturned. River Mo'o waits, watching her every move, hearing her belches and snorts and eerie releases. He, shaking out the raindrops from his mane of writhing eels, belts out a wicked laugh. Get plenty time, he says, slowly, sharpening his battle-ready claws against the skull boulder. He waits patiently for the right moon. O Wailuku, you watery, undulating Wahineali'i, once a graceful trickle from Na Lani, you've morphed into a skull crusher, you stone carver, you mo'o slayer, so bloodthirsty for the fearless, sweet weed-scented swimmer. Or was it the claw of the mo'o, of the rain-drenched cave of goddess Hina, that dragged the young baga into the murky depths? Upon reaching her deep, dark, limu-laden green mouth, Maka'olanakila, she forcefully surrenders, her full, swollen self plunging once more into the wide, stormy bay. Both river and sea currents reluctantly mingle. She truly is what old Hawaii called her, destructive waters. Wailuku, the river, life-giving, life-grasping, ruthless Kahawai. E Wailuku I kaua loku loku, e Wailuku I kaua kālai lepo, e Wailuku I kaua nahu ili, e Wailuku I kaua kālai pohaku, e Wailuku I kaua ho'omomona aina, e Wailuku I kaua makana nui I ka mahi ai.
That was Vanessa Lee Williams, Hawaiian language activist, reading her poetry. And the music you hear is from the Lau Hawaiian Collective, a cut called Kawai Olu Waihipio, from a CD called Wai, Hawaiian Freshwater Songs. You are tuned to WPVM Radio, LP 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. This is Listen and Be Heard, and we will continue now with the conversation between Tony Robles and poet and Hawaiian language activist Vanessa Lee Williams.
That spirit and that message is something that comes to bear in a very powerful way through the poetry, through the literature of what's coming out of Hawaii right now. Again, books like this collection, Kipuka, that came out of Bamboo Ridge, there are a lot of powerful stories and poems in, and this is just one edition. I mean, we have folks that are writing wonderful poems. We have people like Scott Kikawa that are writing from the point of view of people that were, who grew up in Hawaii, from that point of view, from the point of view of not just some, oligarch who, is connected with the sugarcane industry, but people that are from, really local people like Gary Pak. He's another one, a Korean brother who grew up in Hawaii. He wrote a wonderful book called I think it was called The Watcher of Waipuna. And his books talk about labor, talk about land rights, talk about the spirits, right? The spiritual soul of Hawaii. Now you write in Pidgin. You wrote a piece that was inspired by Romeo and Juliet. I think it was called Romeo and Iuleki, I think.
Yeah.
And that was a hell of a piece because I lived in Hawaii for about a year and a half, and I just remember the voices of people that I went to school with, people that I knew who spoke Pidgin. So for our listeners at WPVM, it's not Pigeon, it's Pidgin, Pidgin. Can you talk to us about Pidgin and how it plays in the cultural fabric, particularly, as it relates to the literary scene and writers, from Hawaii?
Yeah, Pidgin is a Creole language, and it's Hawaiian Creole English, and people are born speaking it. And it first came about primarily through the sugarcane and pineapple culture, the plantations, because so many laborers from different countries were coming together, primarily from Asia, Puerto Rico, some from Europe. And there was no common language. Most of them didn't speak English, and they didn't have to speak English because they all were kept in their little communities. They called them camps on the plantation site or very near it. But in order to conduct business, merchants in the towns had to speak in a form of English that everyone could understand. And this is how Pidgin came about. Speaking it at work, speaking it to someone who doesn't speak your language, going to the shops and buying things, or just communicating with the doctor. And this is how it came about. And it survives. And thanks to people like Bamboo Ridge, the people at Bamboo Ridge support it. And what a lot of people don't understand is that the syntax of the Hawaiian language is preserved in Pidgin. And if you speak Pidgin and you don't speak Hawaiian and you start taking Hawaiian language, you will soon find out that, there are some similarities in sentences that make a lot of sense in Pidgin, but they don't if you translate the Hawaiian directly or literally into English.
Yeah.
So that's one gift. It brings people, again, it brings people together. It brings the Kama'aina culture, the local culture together.
Yeah, I remember in
So-
high school, coming from San Francisco, I didn't, it took a while to kind of get it. And there was one phrase the one that got me was probably the first one. I think one of the guy that I met, friend of mine, he would say, "The kind, bro, the kind, bro." And then for my mind, I'm like, "Well, what kind?" No, it's not what kind. No, it's the kind, right? So it's like the unanswerable. It's like you just got to feel it.
Yeah.
And then there was another
Yeah.
guy, an older guy who, and I'm not sure if this is correct. I'm just trying to remember it. But there was a phrase in Pidgin. I think he says that it means you go ahead and I'll meet you. And I think the phrase was you stay come, I stay go. Or you stay go, I stay come.
Yeah.
I thought that sounds cool, man.
Yeah.
I'll see.
Yeah.
I'll meet you. You stay come, I stay go.
That's great.
But yeah, like, Bamboo Ridge. And yeah, it's just really good to see. Like when I was reading that collection in, Kipuka, because you have folks in there, like Elmer, what's his name? Elmer Omar Piso, who is a Filipino. He's born in Philippines, and he's writing about elder Filipinos in Hawaii, right? And he's kind of taken on the cadence and the rhythm and just immersed himself, and it's just a really beautiful thing. We are running a little low on time, but Vanessa, again, thank you for being on our program. Vanessa Lee Miller, poet, activist, playwright. For people that want to get more acquainted with your work, how can they do that?
I would say I don't have a website, but I do write a lot for Bamboo Ridge on their website, and we do monthly. They're not contests, but they encourage people to send something in, to write something, and they sometimes give you trigger words to help you along with just inspiring you or pushing you to write something. So that's bambooridge.org.
Bambooridge.org. And
that's correct.
There was a blog post from August from this year on the piece that was inspired by Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
So they can find that.
Yeah.
Folks,
yes.
I got to say, listeners, the piece is fantastic. It had me going. It's passionate, funny at the same time. So do check it out. Again, Bamboo Ridge, that's bambooridge.org.
Yes.
bambooridge.org. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
It's a pleasure. You've touched my heart, and I really enjoyed it.
And for our listeners at WPVM, there is some information on how to help in the recovery in Maui. There is a website called civilbeat.org. That's Honolulu Civil Beat. That's civilbeat.org. There are a number of links to organizations that are doing work on the ground.
Thank you, Tony Robles, for that very interesting and educational interview with Vanessa Lee Williams, poet, playwright, and Hawaiian language activist. My name is Martha Senator, and the show is Listen and Be Heard. If you would like to listen to that interview again, which you might because maybe there's things that you missed, or maybe you would like to share it with somebody because you thought it was an important conversation or an interesting conversation or a conversation that you would like to continue with someone you know to expand both of your minds, well, you can do that. You could go to listenandbeheard.net. And there you will find an archive of all of our shows, as well as uncut video interviews of the authors that Tony has interviewed over the last 27 shows now that we have produced together. And you will find other things there at listenandbeheard.net as well. We have columnists who write for the website, and you don't even hear them at all on the radio show, but they have interesting things to say and different perspectives from different parts of the country. And so I invite you to visit us at listenandbeheard.net. Leave us some feedback, or maybe you are an author, a poet, a playwright, a language activist, a storyteller, a spoken word artist. You have a book or a CD and you would like the world to know about it. You would like people to listen and hear what you're about. Well, you can give us a try and we'll take a look at your book and possibly invite you as a guest on the show. And you could do that by sending it to WPVM Radio, and get your pen and pencil ready, or however you do it these days, your watch, your phone, your text messaging device, and I will give you all that information at the end of the show. Or you could just go to listenandbeheard.net and you will most likely find it there somewhere. And I'm working on the website. Please believe me, I am a little bit behind on the videos, and actually, you know, it takes a lot of work to produce all of this, and I'm looking for volunteers to help me out with this commercial-free show that I'm volunteering to produce and bring to you in Asheville and around the world, because I'm a writer and I love writers, and I love reading and writing and talking about reading and writing and how to write and who writes and who's writing and what's been written lately and what books are out there, new books, old books, used books. Let's talk about the business of books and why we like to read and how we can all support each other in those endeavors. So we will go on now to do a spoken word set. We'll hear from Katherine Dunn and Reg E. But first we will start with The Fire this time. My name is Martha Senator. The show is Listen and Be Heard. The radio station is WPVM LP 103.7, the voice of Asheville.
I'll be honest with you. I hate war in all its forms. Physical, psychological, spiritual, emotional, environmental. I hate war. And I hate having to struggle. I honestly do, because I wish I had been born into a world where it was unnecessary. This context of struggle and being a warrior and being a struggler has been forced on me by oppression. Otherwise, I would be a sculptor or a gardener, a carpenter. I would be free to be so much more. I guess part of me, or part of who I am, and part of what I do is being a warrior, a reluctant warrior, a reluctant struggler, but I do it because I'm committed to life. We can't avoid it. We can't run away from it, because to do that is to be cowardice. To do that is to be subservient to devils, subservient to evil. And so that the only way to live on this planet with any human dignity at the moment is to struggle.
remembered curses from the playground. Your mother is probably the only one you've ever known who really wanted to kill you. And your mother stopped cars on Sunset Boulevard by the length of her legs and the Magyar in her cheekbones, though she claimed it was just good posture. And your mother married 5 handsome men, but swore she only did it for the money. And your mother made ships out of pine cones and guns out of milk cans, and no human male was calm within 50 feet of her. And your mother told wild stories at the dinner table till you were cracked and leaking with laughter. She said Stalin died from eating 2 whole chickens all by himself, but she ate only wings and necks and the Pope's nose. And your mother called you dove or childy and broke your nose and put your baby brother in the hospital with a fractured pelvis. And your mother dragged you through bean fields and dreams and turned the hose on bill collectors. And your mother could curse. And your mother stole proudly, saying it's not dishonest, it's resourceful. And your mother, the teetotaler, ran a DeSoto full of booze into dry counties to buy Christmas toys. And your mother ran a red light in a strange town and got the arresting officer to pay her rent. And your mother fed you all one winter by drawing portraits of Albert Schweitzer with black crayons on old pillowcases and selling them to suckers. And your mother forgot toothbrushes, but taught you to make slingshots and to keep your distance in a fight. And your mother didn't really care if you went to school, but she told you you were God and rubbed your face in raw beauty 3 times a day. And your mother knew if you got hurt, even across town, but it never worried her. And your mother made pie out of 1 saltine and a raisin. And your mother singed her eyebrows, scooping you from a fire some claim she set, and drew them on with Maybelline forever after. And your mother ran off with a new man and did her best to leave you behind, but you hitchhiked after her. And your mother wore you out with switches, broom handles, belts, and her paralyzing tongue, then snatched your ass from the draft board and hid you for a whole war. And your mother sliced off the top of your skull with her terrible love and poured in the charred sludge of hate, and there was never a dull moment. And your mother suspects you of plotting against her, and she's right.
Numberless are the sands on the seashore. Us folks are the peoples who look towards the sea. Vision and memory, past, perfect futures, are strewn about our musics like seaweeds on the shores. Our eyes, hearts affired, dancing on, limbs aghast and bedazzled, caressing these sands, hand-clapping spirits. Our souls are numberless. Like bands of the spectra, our hues are numberless. Jump back, brothers, see our sisters prancing on the sea, their curves and spheres rounding off the edges of the sands, making sheets of molten glisten we are evocations of. This sweet liquid strumming on these vibrant far reaches on our faithful shore. This ritual clamor, we are on this shore spelling out the seasons of reason. Numberless beings grow gills, sprout wings, drunken on the bottom of pink coral reef, then leap the sea, sailing easy to afar, to a star we are stoned reflections of. To view from there these sands who do not know they are us, not these sands, our foundations on these wheels of things, rolling shore, surf-washed, waves yearn to roll in murmurs on. These grits are relentless, too, in change in forms, numberless, pastel and pale yellows mixed by the sea, the wind, the sun, our constant companions on this sphere, on this beachhead here, on our minds. And communal heart molds sands into cities and ports to welcome from the sea more ancestors to be, to play on this shore notes of universal hide. Seek. Time here is numberless. We've known not its name. We are the growth here. We are the trees. We are the creatures here, so it is said, on which cosmic bet no wages subsist. Numberless are the names of this life on these sands, on the dream washed up on these shores us folks are on, the peoples who look towards the sea. Looking towards the sea, our songs are the bread of the shore, our spirits our spawn. On these quick sands we name ourselves numberless.
Obscene obsession, constant connection. Tablets, laptops, snapshots of self. Brain-dead devices focus on faces. Multiple moments, plethora of places. Again and then when none know why. Devotion of some to become number one. Hits, likes, comments below. Stalking ourselves, now our own prey. Selfishly snapping salacious selfies. Bedrooms, bathrooms, 10 times a day. Gleaming bicuspids, dimples and cheeks. Sneaking, peeking, freaks of an industry paid from our vein. Inconsequential imaging saying. Semi-nude, extensions in hair. Faces distorted, glare while we dare. Quickly share how we appear. Now the voyeur. No sign of fear. Diamond in nose, adhere to oppose. Infinite intimacy with friends and foes. Influenced by what we think others see. Look at ourselves. Can it be we? Or simply some of what's in, what's not? Sending, trending, in hopes photos hot. Stand in mirror, reflection gone. Vainglorious vampires long to live on. Can one judge self without one's heart? Hits, likes, comments start with flick of switch, androids click. Some say simple, some say sick. Automatons dictate existence, algorithms, data, statistics. In this virtual world we seem to deem real, moments of clarity, devices don't feel. They steal our soul, control what we are. In hindsight, everybody's not a star.
Updating. Go to my settings. Change my post type. Fix my code. Select my image. Click on my address. Save me. Okay. I played that piece by Reg E, courtesy of the artist, and it made me think of that little piece that I wrote, so I shared it with you. That was, Reg's piece was called Connections, Thanks to my new co-producer, Jeannie Hopper, for providing the connection back to Reg E. Gaines, who, of course, I used to run into a lot in the 90s in New York City. And I guess now he's more of a West Coast man, and I'm like a Southern woman, believe it or not. So there we go. Before that, you heard the voice of Q.R. Hand Jr. doing his poem, Numberless Are the Sands of the Seashore. And before that, you heard the voice of Katherine Dunn doing a piece called American Dozens, Remembered Curses from the American Playground, which, unbelievably, I was able to play and not break any FCC rules. And that was from the CD I've been playing from a bit over the last few shows called Talking Rain. And before that, we heard The Fire This Time, a piece called Reluctant Warrior on a CD called Still Dancing on John Wayne's Head. So, the show is Listen and Be Heard, and my name is Martha Senator. And as I mentioned to you, we have a new co-producer, Jeannie Hopper, DJ Jeannie Hopper, who also works on Laura Flanders' show, who you can hear on this radio station, WPVM, earlier on the same day as Listen and Be Heard. And as always, we need to thank Davine Dial, the station manager, for making all of this possible and having our show originate in Asheville, North Carolina. And we really do appreciate the opportunity to broadcast terrestrially on a commercial-free station geared towards empowering and educating and listening to the community in Asheville and the community around the world on WPVMFM.org. My co-producer, Tony Robles, is on the West Coast as we speak, and he did send in some very interesting things from poetry reading in Manila Town out there, and we'll be hearing that next week on Listen and Be Heard. But coming up from Tony very, very soon, as in a minute from now, is a conversation that he had with poet Yvette Miller, who is down in Charleston, South Carolina. I say down because I'm in upstate South Carolina in Greenville, and Tony is actually in Hendersonville, North Carolina. So Listen and Be Heard is reaching out to the Carolinas, to local authors, writers, poets, and other folks, readers, bookstore owners, anybody who likes to read and write. We'll go now to Tony Robles' conversation with Yvette Murray, poet.
Hey, this is WPVM. Welcome to Listen and Be Heard Radio. My name is Tony Robles, and if you've listened to our previous shows, you know that what I do here is interview authors, local authors, and authors in other states. Today we have a local author from South Carolina who has written, I got to say, a book that really just blows me away. Yvette R. Murray is the author of a collection of poetry. It's a chapbook called Hush Puppy. Now there's a comma after the hush, so you got to make sure that you get that comma in there. Hush Puppy. I'll read from her bio. She is an award-winning poet and writer. She has been published in the Chestnut Review, Emery's Journal, Litmosphere, A Gathering Together, and others. She is the 2022 Susan Laughter Myers Poetry Fellow, a 2021 Best New Poet Selection, a Watering Hole Fellow, and a Pushcart Prize nominee. Congratulations on that. She is a board member, and she is a board member of the South Carolina Writers Association and the Poetry Society of South Carolina, and a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And you can find her on Twitter at Miss Yvette Writes. Again, at Miss Yvette Writes. Yvette Murray, welcome to Listen and Be Heard. Let me ask you this question. Hush Puppy with the comma in the middle. What is the significance of the title?
First of all, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate being here today.
Oh, absolutely.
There was a poetry reading at one time, an open mic in downtown Charleston, one of the older sections of Charleston. You may or may not know that Charleston is being very much gentrified from every area, east, west, just everywhere. Come yet, as we call him, somebody who came here. And I was, stating how I feel about gentrification. And he made the comment that, so would you prefer if it were just a group of abandoned, burned out buildings? Some people think that's all it was, that they don't realize it was thriving, bustling communities. At one point, we had 5 high schools in downtown Charleston. They were businesses, lawyers, doctors, nurses, restaurants. And it's important to me that people realize what the neighborhoods were, but also that you should not feel so comfortable to state your opinion, say what you think something is when you've done absolutely no research into the area. It's just important to me that people know, and they need to hush, just do some research, look into, find out what was there, because people don't realize in Charleston, the history that they're walking past, that they actually walk past buildings with little teeny tiny fingerprints in the brick, and that those are the fingerprints of enslaved children who were used to make the bricks. And they walk past stuff all the time. The cobblestone streets, the buildings, everything. They just walk past it, don't know what it was. And our communities were, I call them an enchanted urban forest, because they were self-contained neighborhoods where people looked out for each other and knew everybody, and everything that was needed was there. I just think it's important that is remembered. Not just Charleston. Every city where African Americans went began to flourish, and we were not done like some other cities where, we weren't flooded out and just the whole town disappeared like Lake Lanier in Georgia, but the stories need to be told.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's so important. Is this collection for you a gift to the community, to the people that you grew up with, to the spirit of the place? Because, like you said, you have people that have come in, have gentrified, who don't really know the place, who really are there to take and not give. And it seems that, with the tenderness that you've written these poems, the tenderness and the regard that you have and the respect that you have for the place, do you see this as, like a You see it as kind of a
I
love
would
letter.
say so. Absolutely, yes. That and the important thing is, I think, for all creators to remember and realize when you go to read at an event and the attendees are not really, feeling you, they're not really understanding you, it doesn't matter, because once it's heard, it can't be unheard.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's published, it's not going to be unpublished. Once you read the poem, you can't unread it. No matter how an individual may try to push it to the side, forget about it, it's still in there. And it's the words, the meaning, the feelings behind it are taking root in their psyche, and they can't get rid of it. So it is a love letter. It is a testament to the business and the people that were there.
Yeah, the sense of place is very powerful. I get a sense that these poems they're stories, but they're monuments as well. And I know that in this part of the country, there are monuments that that have been controversial,
Yes.
that people want to take down. We have a government right now, state governments that want to ban certain books. They want to ban the teaching of Black history. Could you talk about that, and perhaps how your poems are in resistance to just that thing?
It's so important that it's incumbent on all creators right now to get their truth out and tell their truth, because there are efforts to shut down the truth every single where you go. In the book, there's lots of notes on the bottom, notes what it's talking about. I put a Gullah dictionary and I'm grateful for the opportunity I had. I let someone read the manuscript, and they thought it was typos. And I realized that this person was not familiar with the culture, and that I needed to let people know it's not a culture, it's the language. So it's definitely important that we as creators tell our stories, that we build these literary monuments, as you called them, to the people whose names can never ever be forgotten. There's so much history within the poems, and it's important that the references are made so people can look stuff up. There's specific names, look stuff up, see what it is, and I encourage people to do so. If there's a word that you don't recognize, the Mende song, you don't know what that is, then find a way, just Google it. There's a whole documentary about it. The Rice Kingdom, that was so important. You mentioned it earlier, rice and cotton and indigo. People talk about what was done, what happened, but to know what really happened is essential in today's day. And it's not just essential for our Black children, it's essential for other white people as well, everybody else, because some people, people fall into a wide spectrum. Some people harbor a lot of hate that they've been taught, and some people don't know, and they believe what they think they have heard, but they really don't know. Those are the people, I think, that are most important for us to try to reach, because they don't know. And a lot of people, I find, they want to know, they want to learn, they want to really figure out. I got this calendar from the Equal Justice Initiative. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's a lot of history, a lot of events on every single day of the year. And there was one year I posted every year what it was, whatever, every day, what happened on that day. And a lot of people went and bought the calendars. I think people are thirsty for knowledge. I know that the people that harbor hate, are committing terrible crimes against our people. They are loud. They're very loud. And I think it's important for those of us who do not harbor hate, those of us who harbor love, those of us who stand for the truth. It's important for us to be just as loud. And having a book published is being loud. It's out there. It's out there for people, and they can find it, they can buy it, they can read it, they can Google what it increase their own knowledge. I think the increase of knowledge surrounding the truth of what our country was built upon, which is the backs of enslaved Africans, that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, it just reminds me what you said. You reminds me of what James Baldwin always said about, about the truth, that when the truth is withheld,
Absolutely.
that everybody suffers. That the fact that white people have not been told their history and the truth of the things that their ancestors were involved in hurts them as well, because it's the truth that is betrayed. It's kind of like I kind of look at it in a way of being kind of like you have this call for monetary reparations, which is rightful, but then for our own stories, our own narratives, that that's a form of spiritual reparation. I think that takes shape, and that lives. Both of your sections, your wonderful and beautiful book, Hush Puppy, has two sections. There's a call section, and there's a response section. And it just reminds me, and when I think of call and response, I think of, I'm thinking of, first off, I think of music, and I think of engagement, and I think of sharing the spirit. Can you talk about the significance of call and response and how that flows through?
One of
work?
the things, you're quite correct. The call and response is a form of music found here down in the South. Came from the Praise House. You can find it in modern gospel music today as well. The spirituality that kept us going, that kept us alive. And it's the point of, even when you hear some people speak, they may say something, they may say, "Isn't that right, y'all?" And they're expecting people to respond to them. It's a form of engagement. The call and response is getting you engaged, wanting you to understand to the point that you have to open your mouth and say something, even if it's just And so the structure of the book is itself a form of engagement, that I want you to be moved and start being inquisitive about the things that's being spoken about, to the point where you have to do something, even if it's just discuss it with somebody else, if it's look up something and find out something, how the fortunes were made in your own city. Schools, names of schools is an important thing also, because educators were a part of the Reconstruction push. There were so many Black educators. And I think anybody in any city, any Black person in any city can look up the names of their schools and find really interesting history behind it. Why was the school named that? Who is that person? And then the freedom schools, the normal schools that they call them, which were the schools for educators at that time, so very important. Everywhere, I believe, they're all over. Old school, what was that about? What happened there? I hope that it will light a fire in a lot of people's minds and hearts to do some more research and find out some more truth, because there is a lot out there.
That is so true, because I always felt that if you wanted to get to know a place, like if you're living in a city or take a look at who they name their streets after and look it up.
Yes.
And then you'll see where that city's coming from. If if they're naming it after somebody that was down and dirty, there might be a down and dirty spirit in the city that you might might happen to be. In fact, I always had a kind of a joke. Back home in California, there's a city called Danville. And I'd ask people, I said, you know who they named that after? They said, no. And there's some guy named Dan. So, I always thought that was kind of funny. One of the things that really kind of got to me in the story, in the poems and the pictures that you're painting, there's a universal quality here because, on the one hand, your setting is South Carolina. It's the history. It's Charleston, but this could apply to the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yep.
This could apply to the Fillmore District in San Francisco, which is like the historic African American community. Somebody from East LA could read this and relate to it. A Chicano from East LA could read this and know exactly what you're talking about. Let's say a Laotian immigrant from Fresno could read this. A South Asian immigrant in Fresno, California could read this and know what you're talking about. I mean, I read this like you from downtown, part 1 and part 2. I know what you're talking about. I'm a half Filipino, half Black kid from San Francisco, California. I read this. I know exactly what I know where you're coming from. I get it. Even though I don't know Gullah and I don't, there's some of this that it just resonates, the meaning of it, the depth of the meaning.
When you can touch on that universal chord, that universal emotion that everybody feels, even though the poem itself might be about something specific. In those 2 poems that you mentioned, those names up top are the actual names of old neighborhoods here and from downtown Charleston. But the universal part is where it says, when their dreams rip, who's going to mend them? When you have a community like that, everybody's kid is everybody's kid. If the child is coming home crying and their pants are ripped, somebody's going to ask them, hey, what happened? They're going to reach out and touch, but not having that is a loss that we have. And every person that's from a community that was that type of community feels that loss, and they know it's like, who's gonna do it now? And we have to build our community in different ways. It's not geographic anymore. We have to build a community in different ways, and I think reaching and finding and touching that universal chord that everybody can understand. I personally think that's important.
When you speak of Doozy Choosy Alley, the Boulevard, the Burn, the Manor, the Borough, West Side, East Side, the Drive, I think of San Francisco. We have that in Oakland, in San Francisco, in LA, in Fresno, in all these different places. Like my friend from Vermont College, Khadijah, she's from Philly. She lives in Memphis now. She could read this, and she could see Philly. She could see Philly in this. Yeah, I mean, I see and feel San Francisco in this, even though it's 3,000 some miles away. There's some Frisco flavor in that, and and the people in Frisco, if they, a lot of my people over there, and not necessarily Black folks, Filipino folks in San Francisco, we call them Frisco-Pinos. Could read this and totally relate to what you're talking about. But anyway, it's we're running down with time right now. So again, this is just a wonderful monument. This book is really, again, it really blew me away. The heart and the spirit and the fire, and this is just it just resonated with me. I just felt like I knew this place, and I felt like you were a guide, and not just a tour guide. You were a guide of the spirit, and just providing that voice for those that have passed on and for those that are to come.
Thank you very much.
Again, this is Yvette R. Murray, award-winning poet and writer. Her new book, Hush, Puppy, the comma in the middle of the hush and the puppy, poems at the heart of South Carolina, Charleston in particular, with all the dignity and respect that is due, the honor for the ancestors and for the literary landscape, physical and spiritual landscape. Yvette, thank you so much for being on our program. And for those that want to get your book and know more about your work and follow what you're doing, is there a website or someplace?
The website is currently under construction, but the book is available on Amazon. You could just Google the name of the book and it's there. It's also available on finishinglinepress.com. Again, just search my name.
Okay.
And I can be found on Twitter at Miss Yvette Writes. Yes.
Miss Yvette Writes on Twitter at Miss Yvette Writes. The book can be found finishinglinepress.com. Again, finishinglinepress.com. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful read. After you read it, you're going to be asking yourself, are you from downtown? And then you're going to ask yourself again, are you from downtown?
Exactly.
There's going to be two parts. So you're going to do a call and response all on your own.
I love it.
Yvette, thank you so much for being on our program. We very, very much appreciate it. Again, this is Listen and Be Heard Radio. Tony Robles here, and we're going to toss it back to Martha in the studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony Robles, for that interview with Yvette Miller down in Charleston, South Carolina. My name is Martha Senator, and the show is Listen and Be Heard. Tony and Yvette were talking about downtown everywhere, USA, and I was thinking a little bit about the history just of Listen and Be Heard in the Lower East Side of Manhattan and then in downtown Vallejo, California. And I have been bringing little bits and pieces of Listen and Be Heard open mic history, because that is the history of Listen and Be Heard. It started out as an open mic at the University of the Streets on East 7th Street across from Tompkins Square Park in New York City back in the early 1990s. When I was a single mother of a 3-year-old girl and also a writer, a poet, a spoken word artist. And it was a very fascinating and interesting time. But eventually I had to leave, and I landed out in Vallejo, California. And after a little while, started up Listen and Be Heard there, and it became an event, and then even a poetry cafe and a weekly arts newspaper for a while. And while I was doing the weekly event, there were certain people who came every week. I played one of them previously on earlier in the show, and that was QR Hand Jr., who actually lived in Vallejo at the time. Another one was Avotcja. And I was looking through the archives and came up with an unlabeled tape of one of those open mics. And who started off the tape but Avotcja, which is appropriate. So I'm going to play that piece for you along with Yvette reading from her book, Hush, Puppy. And I think that they go really well together. And I think you will probably agree that all in all, you're going to get a picture of downtown USA with the little assembly of spoken word that I've put together for you for the next 15 minutes or so. So I hope that you will stick around and enjoy, listen, contemplate, reverberate, vibrate, and I don't know what else. You tell me. My name is Martha Senator, and this is Listen to Be Heard.
You from Downtown? Part 1. Doozy Choosy Alley, the Boulevard, the Burn, the Manor. Beloved mantra of old kickball champs. Love parades of our holiday college kids. Holidays and summers our college kids. The tat-tat-tat of drum lines. Drum lines and science, math, and chemistry. Too excellent to stay, so away we flew. How excellent we flew, and did we sing? The stride of soldier on her mother's front porch. The stride of soldier on his mother's front porch. Backyard kickball graduation day. Graduation days are our holy days. Run to the corner store, here baby. Corner store is closed, candy lady's gone. Beloved mantra of old kickball champs.
This is WPVM 103.7 LP, Asheville, North Carolina.
This is called Oaktown Blue. And I'm grateful to say that I wrote a play based on this poem, and we have one short run, and we're trying to get it back up running again. They came on foot, by car, riding hope on horseback, by train on the plain. They came wearing faith pockets full of dreams, running from cotton fields and chopping cane. They came running knowing better was waiting, carrying their whole lives in paper bags, carrying guitars on their backs, sacks full of tall tales and blue songs of a home they knew they'd always miss but swore they'd never go back to. They came by ship, discharged scars, wounds no time could heal, released from military hospitals on West Coast shores they'd never even seen. Battle fatigue, confused, feeling used, and they came in droves from the wars, shell-shocked and tired and looking for a home, and when they didn't find it, they built it. On any night in West Oakland, you might run into migrant workers straight out the cotton fields of Georgia, strutting their stuff and partying and bumping and grinding alongside of armies of ditch dingers, trade people, and unemployed PhDs who were never told they were unemployable. Saints and sinners from Texas and Mississippi, from Arkansas and Virginia, Maryland, the Carolinas, and even the West Indies, all dancing away their rage and sadness hidden behind memories of clouds of cotton and buried beneath too many mountains of sugarcane and tobacco leaves of frustrated fury, gladly forgotten and left to rot in deserted plantation fields. And you could hear the relief in the clubs as Big Mama Thornton took her crown and gave Oakland everything. Woman gave us everything she wasn't allowed to give in the South. John Lee Hooker brought the boogie out the Delta, and Bob Geddens, Ivy Joe Hunter, and Charles Brown gave us smooth. You could go right down the street and get yourself some of Beverly Stovall, Sonny Rose, Jimmy McCracklin, J.J. Malone, or the sophisticated sweetness of Jimmy Witherspoon, or the raw passion in L.C. Good Rock and Robbins' blues violin, or get your insides ripped out and put back together again as Etta James and Sugar Pie DeSanto tore the roof off the house. The blues didn't just slip into the Bay Area. It was like a cloud burst. The blues came in waves, powerful waves as subtle as a tidal wave and as painlessly as a pregnant woman in hard labor. The blues came in oversized, raggedy overalls, sometimes sporting evening gowns and three-piece suits. It came furious, luxurious, jubilant, overworked, and underpaid, running from the Klan, holding on to everything they had, while others were just looking for something to hold on to. The blues came west looking for freedom land. L.A., Sacramento, and San Francisco had that big city thing. Folks rocked in Russell City. Vallejo had it seen. Richmond had a kind of smooth Chi-Town sounding thing. But if you wanted a gut-wrenching, soul-taking, down-home blues, the kind of church and your mama both warned you about, the kind of blues that made your hair stand on end and snatch you out of chairs and made you shout and jump act a fool, that dance that good old makes you want to holler kind of blues, you're going to have to come to Oakland. Oakland, the blues mecca of the West Coast. Scene was as wild or sophisticated as you were. Every place a different personality, and every night was party night where you could romance and grind or whine and cry about what you didn't have, or brag and be loud and proud and show off everything you did have, and talk about everything you wanted to be at Slim Jenkins Club, Esther's Orbit's Room, Ruthie's Inn, or Eli's Mile High. Every night an exorcism where another demon was put to rest, where you were free to be real or be downright nasty. You could show your stuff till you were wet with sweat at the Rum Boogie, Christie's Grill, the Palladium Club, and all the nameless hidden round-the-clock juke joints, and the blues came down like rain, fell down on everything, fell down on Oakland where blues was king. Then they came. Knocked down the cafes, tore up 7th Street, closed the clubs, promised jobs and schools to uplift and save. They took the hood and left a wasteland full of restless spirits. Ghosts running loose with plenty of reasons to sing the blues. But when everyone else goes to sleep, you can still see them, hear them. J.C. Burris, Dottie Ivory, Z.Z. Hill, Mississippi Johnny Waters, hear them singing their sounds written all over every building. It seeps up out of the ground you walk on and it's yours. Little Johnny Taylor, Johnny Hartzman, Percy Mayfield, listen, they tried to free you. They tried to heal you with their songs and blues so strong, even Willie Bobo was singing Never Go Back to Georgia. Buddy Ace, Little Willie John, Cool Papa Sadler, Brownie McGee, Lady Margaret, Lowell Folsom, they'll always be here. They refuse to disappear. Nothing can stop it. Gentrifiers can't block it. The same folks that dance from the blues scene into the mambo sessions and back again at the California Hotel now run to Dorsey's Locker, Bluesville, Sweet Jimmy's, and the Fifth Amendment. The same people and their children are bringing in the new. Queen Ida came two-stepping out the bayou leading the Zydeco parade, and Sugar Pie DeSanto and John Lee Hooker never grow old and still ride on the top of our totem pole. There's Lady Bianca and Jesse James, E.C. Scott and Al Vaughn, Sister Monica, Bobby Webb and Gwen Avery, Little Frankie Lee and Billy Dunn, Wiley Trash, Faye Carroll, Willie G, Frankie Kelly, Johnny Talbot and Ronnie Stewart, leading the caravan of all-stars into tomorrow. It's in the air we breathe, and it just keeps on coming and coming and coming and coming and coming and coming, and nothing and nobody can stop it. Other folks can keep their big heads stuck way up in the clouds, but when it all comes back down to earth, the prize is ours, and it's our jewel, and it's still coming down Oaktown Blue. See you next week.
Avotcja. You from Downtown, Part 2. The Borough, West Side, East Side, The Drive. Grown wild like ivy in our mother's yards, we now drive our own fine German cars. Our fine cars down these cobblestone streets. We have grown rich and wild away from you. Welcomed in fertile soil away from you. Corner stores closed, candy ladies gone. Candy ladies gone, corner stores closed. No scattered seeds can bloom a forest. Not an enchanted forest can they bloom. The new sprouts dream pretty history. Dreams of a pretty new history future.
My introduction to neo-expressionism and graffiti-influenced modern art is in spring 1989 at the Tony Shafrazi Gallery in Soho. I'm with Carol Merengoff, mother of Todd Merengoff, the number 2 ranked 16-year-old tennis player in the East. I teach Todd tactics and strategy, primarily on his private court next to the elaborately constructed swimming pool behind their multi-million-dollar home on Old Westbury, Long Island. Get a call from Carol. Would I like to ride into the city, check out some galleries? This is a bit odd, but since I'm working with Todd later that day, I say, okay, maybe she wants me to lift something. We walk through the door of Shafrazi's. A woman gets up from this desk. Diamonds, Armani, Piaget watch. Pre-Botox face filled with sun. She and Carol swap multiple air kisses and then vanish into an office. On my left, not quite high as a basketball rim, but wide as the space between the foul lines, is this thing. I read the tag beside the canvas. Jean-Michel Basquiat. I know the proper pronunciation because he's recently died and his name is everywhere. I actually seen him a couple of times in Washington Square Park, but didn't realize it until he was pointed out playing the role of the DJ in Blondie's Rapture video. I stand and stare at the painting, imagining it was done by some 5th grader high off a couple of bags of Skittles. Bright, bold, busy. It looks like a mutant cartoon. Far left, melted male figure, arm extended as if to hail a cab in red, gold, green, and gray. Above, disproportionately drawn airplane in black. Far right, yellow taxi cab on white background below crossed out powder blue letters which spell the word bore. Center, childlike attempt at an ambulance, hearse, tow truck, and cop car which seems to be scribbled in green magic marker. Below right, gold crown with red outline on royal blue background, nestled in a 3-sided black brushed box. He must be into jazz improvisation. I see solos all over the canvas. And though the term has not yet reached public consciousness, I get a sense he understands the fine art of sampling. I walk about the gallery, looking now for names, not art. Kruger, Clemente, Warhol, Futura 2000, whose graffiti on canvas looks as if it's been lifted from the door of an uptown number 4. None, not one, is as energizing or engaging as Basquiat's. I walk back, stand, stare. Carol comes from behind, taps me on the shoulder. I could have purchased Charles the first 6 or 7 years ago for $9,000. Now it's worth $200. Would you take that to the car? I turn to see a rust-colored pot filled with tiny black images resembling the 7 Dwarfs on crack. I know these images. A building, Broadway Lafayette, Keith Haring. I pick up the pot, take it to the trunk of the Benz. Carol says no, in the back with the seatbelt on. Flying east on the LIE, I ask Carol what Keith cost. $18,000, but don't tell Paul. We arrive at the estate. I unload her Haring. Marble, metal, meticulous. Silver, steel, asymmetrical stairs, and more than a dozen pieces of art on the wall, of which I've never paid any attention to. I want to ask what they cost, but figure it's rude. Are any of these people famous? Shirley Levine, Julian Schnabel, Andy Warhol, Gilbert and George, Cindy Sherman, Willem de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, Jeff Koons, which looks like a Hoover vacuum cleaner in a plastic box. No. It is an appropriation of a found object which forces us to focus attention on America's growth as an industrial power. Finally, I ask what it's all worth. Carol gives me a series of Miles Davis silences, blows notes while leaving space for the listener to savor and or contemplate. Well, let me see. Maybe 10, no, 12 million. Time to pick up Todd. I grab a set of car keys from the eggshell white Formica kitchen countertop, take a final look at Pollock, and walk away while wondering, why isn't no Basquiat on Paul and Carol's wall?
This is an odd city. Who are those people sitting Indian style on the corner of every boulevard? Why are they all bald? Where did they get those black robes? Each one of them holds a small frog in the left palm. They whisper to the frogs. They lick the frogs. Why did they pray to this sick god? There are no cars on the boulevard. Instead, skinny women with large heads ride on strange machines with only 3 wheels. It is a mockery of our fabulous automobile. It looks more like a forklift. The women know how to work the stick shift. They have small tits and whips, and they speak Russian. Children in the alleys, on the sidewalks. They look old, like they should have white beards and walking sticks and no teeth. What has happened on these streets? What in God's name have the children seen? Every boy child has a glass eye. Every girl child has a black tattoo on her left thigh. This is an odd city. Those flying things that circle the dark synagogue. They are far too large to be birds. Their wings look much too hard to be birds. There is a clock at the top of the synagogue. The clock is stopped, but there is something written on it. It is hard to make out the old-fashioned words. It is hard to see through the shadow of the would-be birds. This sounds absurd, but it seems to say, Brooklyn Time Company, 1908.
So that was a piece called Odd City from its CD called Odd City. And before that, you heard another piece from Reg E called Miles Davis Silences. We heard 2 pieces from our guest, Yvette Murray, that Tony Robles had the conversation with, and about her book, Hush Puppy. And that was You from Downtown, Part 1 and Part 2. And in between those, we heard from Avotcja, a live recording at Listen and Be Heard open mic back in the early 2000s in Vallejo, California. My name is Martha Senator, and the show that you are listening to is Listen and Be Heard on WPVM radio. Many of the wonderful background loops and pieces of music that I've used with the poetry and little spots in the show are provided by J. Rodriguez Sierra, who you can check out on Instagram at J. Rodriguez Sierra. And he also has a website, jrodriguezsierra.com. As I mentioned, we have a new producer on board, DJ Jeannie Hopper, who I'm very happy to have her expertise and her moral support, and I'm looking forward to the great work that we are going to do together. Davian Dial, our station manager, is extremely helpful, and as always, I want to thank her for the opportunity to bring this show to you, to the people of Asheville, and the people who tune in at WPVMFM.org to listen to all the wonderful programming that you can find on this commercial-free community radio station. You can send your book or CD or video or other multimedia material to Martha Senator or Tony Robles, care of WPVM Radio, 34 Wall Street, number 407 in Asheville, North Carolina, 28801. And you could also query me whether you would like to contribute to this show, you would like to interview someone who you find interesting, or you think that I would find your book interesting and you would like to query me about reading your book. Or maybe you would like to write a column at listenandbeheard.net. I do invite you to visit us there. All of our programs are archived there. As well, you can watch uncut video interviews that Tony Robles, he does most of his interviews by Zoom, so we post those uncut interviews. And I will also be contributing some and have done so in the past, and you can find mine there as well. So I want to thank you very much for listening, for tuning in, for contemplating some of the things that you've heard and taking them with you in your heart and into the world and doing what you will with all of the information, the feelings, the good vibes, the questions, and even maybe some possible answers to questions. My name is Martha Senator. My co-contributor to this show is Tony Robles. And I'm going to leave you with a story, especially for our Asheville listeners. And this is a story from Lord Buckley called God's Own Drunk. I'll see you next week when we'll be playing some poetry recorded live in Manila Town in San Francisco, California. Until then, I want to thank you for listening and the opportunity to be heard.
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth, good buddies. I ain't a drinking man, never was a drinking man, teetotal for 35 years. Never cared for it somehow. But I promised to take care of my brother-in-law Steele while he went into town to vote. And she's laying out there just where the map said she'd be. Now I'm going to tell you something, good buddies. She was no little old 5 or 10 cent Steele. Yeah, she laid there like a golden mountain opal. Crazy kind of old hyacinth smell that coming from that still. That big yellow moon was out there and God's sweet lanterns was hanging in the sky. I don't know what got with me, but I lost my head. And a tucker slash. I felt something jump through my body like there was a neon sign held right in my soul saying, "Great days coming." The big old yellow moon is out there, and God's sweet lanterns was hanging in the sky. And that old aromatic had come from that still, and I took myself a couple more slices, and the first thing you know, I started to sing. Never sang no before in my life. I was singing opera. I was singing them jazz songs. I was singing them country songs. I was singing songs I could never know the note myself. I was singing every song, and the big old yellow moon was out there, and God's sweet lanterns was hanging in the sky. And the first thing you know, I took myself 3 or 4 slices of that yellow honeydew juice. And I got a feeling like the top bottom had bit every drop of blood in my body because I fell in love. I fell in love with everything in this great creation, everything walking, not walking, talking, not talking, black, green, blue, yellow, everything because I was drunk. Because I wasn't falling down, slip, sliding drunk. I was God's own drunk. Fearless man. That's when I first saw the bear. Big Kodiak-looking feller, about 16 foot tall, Bismarck-looking bear. Walked right up to that bear, and I got within 4 feet of him, and I looked right up into his eyes, and now I'm going to tell you something, good buddies. My eyes was redder than his was. That bear's a sniffing. He's trying to smell some fear. He can't smell no fear because I'm God's own drunk and I'm a fearless man. That bear expected me to do 1 or 2 things, flip or fly. Didn't do it. That hung him up pretty good. I looked up at him and said, Mr. Bear, I know you got plenty of bear friends over the hill here. Hey, Bear, and Jerry Bear, and Terry Bear, and Mary Bear, and John Bear, and Ray Bear, and Bear Bear, and all them bears. Tell them I'm God's own drunk tonight and I love every one of them. But if they give me any trouble, I'm going to have to run every goddamn one of them off the hill. I moved forward, don't you know he moved back 2 feet? Reached up and I took him by his big old apple pie paw. And I said, Mr. Bear, we both beasts when it comes right down to it. But I'm God's own drunk tonight, and I love every hair in your 27-acre body. I said, I want you to buddy with me. I never had a buddy bear. I took that old big bear over and walked him over and sat him right down by the still. He starts to sniffing. He knows there's some goodies in there. I knowed what he wanted. Ever see them bears at the circus, that silhouette knocking down that sarsaparilla juice? That bear ring-a-ding-ding-ding-ding-ding. He knocked off about 5 of them before you say did-a-do. And that big old yellow moon was out there, and God's sweet lanterns was hanging in the sky. And the first thing you know, that bear started to stomp his big old fat foot on that green grass. And I'm a-singing, and he's a-stomping. And the first thing you know, after 3 or 4 more snorts, he got up and started to do the bear dance. 3 snorts, 2 turns, and a grunt. I tried to do her. I couldn't do her. Just like a jitterbug dance, too simple that he evaded me. But I was singing, and he was a-dancing. The big old yellow moon was out there, and God's sweet lanterns was hanging in the sky. And I'm going to tell you something good, buddies. There was communion on that mountain that night. Love hit me like my body was a great thermometer and flooded me out, and I laid back in that sweet green grass. And I went to sleep with my big buddy the bear's apple pie paw in mine. I slept for 4 hours and dreamt me some tremulous dreams. When I woke up, a big old yellow moon was out there, and God's sweet lanterns was hanging in the sky. And my buddy the bear was a-missing. Now I'm going to tell you something else good, buddies. So was the still. Jim, get that big dog out of there, so help me God, I'll drill him. Don't shoot him, Fred. He's a thoroughbred.
Living it, giving it, having it, taking it, moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is sewing a coat, investing each stitch with magic, creating a unique design, putting it on and wearing it the rest of your life. Living it is knowing that what you see, what you hear is tangible. It's being a rock in the river and being the river too. It's hearing, you'll never be able to do that. Living it is knowing you will do it. It's speaking the unspoken. It's thinking the unthinkable. It's doing the unexpected. It's quitting before you get back. Giving it is having it is taking it is moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it. Living it is loving it. Living it is loving a man you're not supposed to love. It's giving way to emotions, creating commotions, calling attention to yourself. And I got that. Living it is learning from someone who can actually show you. It's cleaning your teacher's house or helping her to find one. It's never ever saying J.O.B. Living it is a one-way ticket and no solid plans. It's smoking a J in a smoke cafe in Amsterdam. It's saying the day is pretty in a strange new city. Living it is giving it. Giving it is having it is taking it is moving it, shaking it, creating it, loving it.